All right. Good afternoon. Am I coming through? Okay, it looks like we have a. Okay, there we go. All right. If I weren't so technologically challenged, it would be much easier for all of you. So, welcome, welcome. I'm glad to be here with you today. I hope that some of you have some fun, engaging comments and questions about the class today or about the Joseph cycle. Now, we don't want to get too far ahead now. So try to keep it focused on from when we first meet Joseph until the end of Torah reading Miketz. So if your questions are around there, that's going to be what we're really looking for. All right, so we want to try to focus on everything that we covered today. I took some notes while I listened to the class again, so I've got some ideas, but I really want to hear some of your ideas. Again, in this week's cycle reading, just like the previous, when we're dealing with the Joseph cycle, we are looking for a couple of things. Number one, we're watching those changes of garments. We're watching the garment changes from point to point along the story, from the very beginning, when we're introduced to Joseph in chapter 37. Remember, the first thing we read about Joseph almost is that his dad makes him this garment. So it's almost like the ancient scribe is alerting us to this idea to watch the clothes, and then we see that over and over and over again. And then, as I tried to point out today, there are stories, connections within the stories, within the stories, within the stories that go. Not only are you supposed to notice things in this reading within chapters as you go along, but you're going to connect things between various other readings before and after. So, for instance, the Joseph cycle, one of the consistent themes is dreams. So we see dreams show up. There are three pairs of dreams, and they're strategically placed. And then not only do the dreams, for instance, the dreams of Joseph have to do with one another, the dreams of the two prisoners have to do with one another, and the dreams of Pharaoh have to do with one another. Also, you see connections between not only do you see connections within those pairs, but you see those spread out and a little bit across on the other dreams. So it's quite amazing, actually. And so those are the kind of things that we're looking for. And then broadly, because we're dealing with Joseph and we're dealing with dreams, we also noted in this particular class that we have a very interesting thing about Joseph and also Daniel, which is much, much later. So Joseph, the Joseph saga, is presented as being very early, and then the book of Daniel is much later. But we in both of those stories we have a Hebrew among captives who is able to interpret the dream of a foreign ruler. So all of these kind of things really show up on my radar as I work through these. And then the other thing that I think is significant, at least for me, when I read through these stories, is the powerful emotional undercurrent of all these narratives. So, for instance, we have not only do we have Joseph, and it's very an emotional story as his brothers come in. They don't recognize him, but he recognizes them. We can almost feel the tension in the air. We also feel it when we're with the boys telling their father about how Joseph, the man of the land, the Lord of the land, has asked for the youngest, and we feel that emotional heaviness where Joseph is saying, where Jacob is telling the boys, I can't go through this again, guys. I've already lost Joseph. Evidently, now I've lost Simeon, and now you're asking me to give you yet another one of my sons. And so I think that this is very, very powerful from beginning to end. So I'm interested in some of your thoughts and some of the observations that you pick up when you read through this. So don't be bashful. This is about learning, this is about sharing with one another. And I really want some of you to give your insight. If you followed along in the class, you listened to me talk for over an hour and a half. That was a long class. So I actually want to hear from some of you. So somebody, let's see what some of your thoughts are. And I am waiting patiently for some of you to raise your hands and let me know what your thoughts are. I noticed that some of you had comments, and so I think you probably have some to share. Jim Brumgard, I'm going to invite you to the stage to speak. Welcome to the show, Jim. All you have to do is unmute your mic and give us your thoughts.
Oh, good. I think I'm working now. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you very, very good. Good job. Yep.
All right, excellent. No, you were commenting about Simeon being the one that was held behind as the other brothers returned to see Jacob. Which brother was it? And I didn't get a chance to look this up, that called for the plan to kill Joseph initially. Which brothers were that? I believe Judah said not to, but I'm trying to
Right.
think. Was Simeon the
As,
brother?
as I recall, it's we're left to kind of put those pieces together. As I recall, it's as if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking there now. I don't believe that it names specifically those who say, let's kill him, but we do see the two plans to stand up on his behalf, as you point out. We have Judah stand up for him, and then we have Reuben stand up for him, and both of these
Okay.
are the ones, yeah. Yeah, I'm
Uh,
just looking. It says it's actually in chapter 37, verse 19. We're not given a name. It says, they said to one another, here comes this dreamer. Come now, let us kill him, throw him into one of the pits, and we shall say that a wild animal has devoured him, and we shall see what will become of his dreams. And then it says Reuben heard it, and so forth. So, but it could be,
okay.
but it could be to your point, I think, that he, that Jacob does, I mean, that Joseph does have something. I'm speculating. Does he have something
Right.
against Simeon? Maybe he could hear Simeon say, maybe overheard him. Who knows?
Well, I was thinking that it was Simeon and Levi that um, planned the massacre at Shechem. So I'm thinking that he tends to be the
Yeah,
bloody one, one of the
yeah,
bloody ones anyway.
right, right. It could be. It could be. We simply don't know for sure, but we certainly have that idea that we have to consider. Again, it's the only thing that the scribe wants us to know are the two boys who are the two sons who come up with plans to save Joseph, and then that plays out over the next several chapters, I guess you'd say.
Right.
Yep,
Right.
good
Well,
good
that's all
thoughts.
I had at the moment.
Okay, well, stick around. You might something else may strike you, and if it does, you jump back up and raise your hand. How about that? Okay, I'm gonna
I'll do that. Thank
invite.
you.
Thanks a lot, Jim. I'm gonna invite Carolyn. Carolyn, welcome. What are your thoughts this morning? How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Regarding Ephraim and Manasseh being half Egyptian,
Uh-huh.
uh, as an 18th century reenactor studying origins of food, it turns out that the leaven, the yeast that we use today, the yeast that started with Fleischmann and some of the others, uh, actually originated in Egypt with the DNA. That says to me that when they left Egypt, not only did they bring the worship of other gods besides the true God and idols, but somebody must have not uh, thrown out their leavening or whatever, that the spores of yeast from Egypt actually came into Israel and have never left. Uh, it's absolutely amazing.
Hmm.
When the kingdom of Israel, uh, the first king went off the rails immediately and set up idol worship, and the kingdom of Israel just uh, the idolatry and the outright paganism that they refuse to give up is
Yeah.
just amazing, and
Right.
was so bad God just got rid of them immediately. Is there anything else that you've come across in your studies that show some of the aftermath or the trappings that came out of Egypt that never left Israel and Judah?
Yes, I would say very much so. In fact, it's interesting that you bring that up, and particularly as you talk about the northern kingdom of Israel. Seth and I are working now on our new series, and one thing, it's not, so if you'll bear with me, not directly tied exclusively to Egypt, but I will say this. Um, the northern kingdom, when Jeroboam rebels, when Jeroboam immediately, almost immediately after he receives the kingdom of the north, one of the things that we see in the text is that there is a tendency, a strong tendency, and a very prevalent worship of the god Baal in Baal in various forms and so forth. So I happen to have been spending the last 2.5 weeks, I guess, on some of those bad elements that were part of, very much a part of, particularly the northern kingdom. And so your words about the north really struck me just now because one of the things that I wanted to do, and I know this isn't directly tied to your question, but one of the things that I wanted to do as I sketch out the northern kingdom and the prophets and the kings associated with the north is I wanted not only to understand the the bad influences from the biblical perspective, but I wanted to understand them from the bad perspective itself. What do I mean by that? I've actually gone in and read English translations, academic translations of all of the text that we have discovered to this point associated with the worship of Baal. Now, I know some people wouldn't necessarily want to do that. I had to. I felt like I had to because I wanted to really understand both sides. Now, back to your question. I think that it becomes apparent, at least according to most academics that I read, that we do have traces of pagan worship, or let's not say pagan. Pagan is often abused and not used properly, but the worship of Egyptian gods, and there are things that seem to creep into the biblical text. Some are called out, some are not. So I do think that we see some of that. Now, your comment about the yeast, I know that particularly in the New Testament writings, that yeast is associated with sin or negativity. And one thing that struck me when you said that is there is when the children of Israel left, one thing that he did tell them was to make the bread without the rising. So So would you interpret that along those lines, that there was an attempt to prevent that yeast, if you spiritualize it or whatever, but it just wasn't adhered to? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Um, I made a comment about wiping your bottom with your left hand and eating out of a communal dish with your right, as far as the Ninevites went. Um, if you are not excruciatingly clean with cleaning your dough bowl or making sure that the surfaces in your kitchen are clean, then the yeast that makes your bread rise is there all along. It carries with you. So the fact that you say that yeast represents, or leaven represents sin, they never left Egypt. They carried the gods, they carried the food, they carried everything about Egypt with them. They never got rid of it.
Well, there's an old saying.
I'm gonna try and find a link to let you see. One of the things that I noticed when I first moved to France was, go ahead. Go
Oh,
ahead, Ross.
no, I'm sorry. I was just going to say that
One of the
when
things
there's
I
a delay.
noticed when I first moved to France was the okay.
Yeah, there's just a delay, I think, between
Go ahead,
me and you, Carolyn.
Ross.
So let me just say, if you find that link, post that link in on the Discord, because that might be a good
One of the
discussion.
things I found when I moved to France was the worship. Okay. Anyway, the Minotaur, the
Carolyn, I'm losing you. I tell you what, let me just say one more time, if you can post the thing that you found on the Discord, I think it'd be great. I'm gonna call on Clody. Clody, I'm gonna invite you to the stage. Thank you very much for joining us. How are you today? You just have to unmute if you're not already working on that. Clody, I see you're on the stage. Can you, are you unmuted? All right. I might have to come back to you as well. All right. Let me, you guys give me 1 second. I'm waiting on Clody, but Clody, what I'll do is I'll come back to you. How about that? I'm going to invite David Tyler. Hey, David, welcome to the stage.
Hey, welcome. My view that I'm going to talk about is kind of a couple of tens of thousands of feet above the actual story of Joseph, but it's about the deeper meaning. And so Carolyn brought up some good things. Other people have brought up good things about, you can take the Egyptian out of Egypt, but you can't take the Egypt out of the Egyptian.
Right.
And Joseph was definitely an Egyptian by this time. And even though he went towards the truth and all this of the Almighty, it's hard to get that out of there. And of course, we could just look at Solomon, and he kind of perverted the whole everything.
Right.
And my view, my only point that I want to make is that I see a lot of people come to the Torah faith, but they can't drop their Christian and Greco-Roman influences easily. It's hard to do, and
Yeah.
that's all I'm saying. The more we go down this road, the more evident it becomes. And I'll just end with that David Horowitz said in his, little write-up of what United Israel was. The last thing he says is, must take the Greco-Roman influence out of Judaism and Christianity, or something like that.
Yeah.
It, it's a really powerful thing to get away from those old things. And I'm going to be honest with you. I have not celebrated Christmas since I was 16. My kids never celebrated Christmas. My wife never celebrated it with me. And yet the Christmas songs get to me. There's an emotional impact that they have.
Yeah.
And the way people are celebrating, and it's hard to separate yourself from that and be honest about it. You know what I mean? I just flew across the country this last week, flying all over and doing my job, and Christmas is everywhere, and it's obtrusive, and again, my point to you at the end of this is, I don't look down at those people at all. I'm on a path that led me away from that.
Yeah.
You had a very good video following Jesus out of Christianity, but it's hard to get it out of the darn, we're in upstate New York. We got snow, all these beautiful Christmas lights, and your Hanukkah lights, they're like, oh, what are you doing? And
Yeah.
and my point is that it's hard to get away from that, and even for Joseph, I'm sure it was difficult, and we've always had that struggle. Those who wanted to follow the Almighty and the Torah-based faith. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. It was great. It was a great class, Ross.
Hey, I appreciate it, David. Yeah, and the other thing is, when you look at these different festivals and all, even the biblical festivals, there are quite a few who have written on the idea that there are influences, kind of to Carolyn's point, that creep into the text that are quite obviously from other cultures. So, for instance, and I know Betty has written on this quite a bit in her various works, but you have the names of the months that creep in, and as you pointed out, David, you have different people, different kings who married and took these pagans and these surrounding neighbors in and worship their gods. I mean, when I'm working through this material on the north, it is bad. It is really, really bad. You have, not only do you have Ahaz, who marries this Ahab, I'm sorry, who marries this Sidonian princess Jezebel, whose father is also, I mean, they're big into Baal worship. You can even hear it in the name. One of their kids, her name is Athaliah. She marries into the line of Judah and corrupts it with Baal worship. So it's, I mean, we tend to look at things in our day and we go, oh, that's pagan. That's nothing compared to what's going on in the biblical world. I mean, it's absolutely not even close. That's why I think a lot of times we look at things going on around us and look at our culture and we say, well, that's pagan. So we either have to stop using the name pagan for what we see in our culture, or we have to come up with a better name for what we see in the biblical text. Does that make sense? Because it is, I mean, especially in these northern kingdoms, it really, really is bad. Hey, good comments, David. Good comments. Clody, are you back? Are you ready to try your mic again? Let's see if it's working yet. All right. Clody, I'm going to leave you up here, and we're going to try this again in just a little while. And Betty, I'm going to bring you up on the stage. My sister, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Can you hear me?
I can.
Great. Shabbat shalom, everybody.
Shabbat
Um,
shalom.
a couple of things. First, I loved your teaching. I mean, the Joseph Saga is one of my favorites. I've written extensively on it, and every time I read the story, I learn something new. But the two things struck me today, and that is the changing of the garments.
Yeah.
And I that is truly significant. And I believe it was either last Shabbat or the one before. It was for the first Shabbat of Hanukkah that we were to read Zechariah 2:14 through 4:7. And that
Right.
is the reference, which I'm sure you know, about Joshua. And he had soiled garments, and so they needed to change his garments. Um, so that's another garment thing.
Yeah.
And then for me personally, I don't know. I just from the very beginning, once I understood Shabbat, and as in the beginning when I understood it, and now I understand more, and hopefully will continue to. But I wanted to change and wear something special because Shabbat is special.
Yeah.
So I wore I wear white just because it's a special day. And I know that people say, and I do believe that change has to come from the inside out, but I
Mm-hmm.
also think that it can work the other way as well.
Yeah.
That when we are dressed appropriately, um, dressed up or whatever, we may think differently and behave differently. Or if, like for white, for Shabbat, it reminds me, hey, this is a special day. It's Shabbat.
Right.
I'm not going to do the things that I normally do. So it's just a good thing for me. And so I will probably have my Shabbat skirt on uh, at our meeting in St. Francisville, and y'all don't laugh at me because it's kind of old and raggedy, but it is 30 years old, and I can't part with it. So it's
I
my
understand.
tradition. Uh,
There you go.
anyway, and
Yeah,
the
you
other thing
mentioned, by
is,
the way, one second. Well, I'm sorry, Betty.
uh
You
go ahead.
mentioned
No.
the UI conference. I'll be posting those
Hmm.
links on our various social media channels to
Great.
remind everyone. You still have time, but it is coming up in April. So April 19, 20, and 21. And we want to make sure that as many people that can come do come. So sorry, I just wanted to, you mentioned
No,
it.
no,
I
no,
wanted to
no.
jump in and say that.
No, I think I'm really looking forward to it, and I hope that we have a great turnout. Just it's going to be, I think it's going to be fantastic. Um,
I agree.
the other thing has to do with someone mentioned that I think it was Patty at one
Hmm.
point in the chat towards the end of the lesson that I mean people were talking about karma and also that life is a spiral, and in Western thought, the timeline is linear, but in Hebrew thought, it's circular. But each time it goes around, it can spiral upwards and, you know, have us go higher and higher, like a trajectory higher. And we have the
Yeah.
choice to either go higher with it and learn from our mistakes and the mistakes of others, our ancestors, or fall back down again and start over. But it is our choice.
Right.
And I mean, you mentioned my writings. I do bring that out too in my book because I think it's really important. And as you said, I believe last time that, God set the sun and the moon for signs and seasons for Otot and Moedim. And he didn't do it just because. He did it because he wants us to notice them and
Right.
to, I feel like, to put our lives in tune with them. And this Joseph cycle is just a very, very important time.
Yeah.
Um,
Every
uh,
year when these particular readings come around, I just can't wait to jump in because even though I think all of us know the story, I mean, it's like you know the story. Everyone knows the story from children on up. I mean, people who are brought up either in church or in synagogue, they know the story. But it's the detail that I think that is so incredibly important that quite often we miss because we're familiar with the story, I think that, would you agree? I mean, I think sometimes we're too familiar with something and we miss it. That's my point.
Well, I agree, and it's that those details are what I call the aha moments or the sparks that just you go, "Oh, wow. I hadn't
Yeah.
seen that before. I can't believe it." Um, I think it's wonderful that we have a chance every time we open the Torah. We ask Hashem to show us wonderful things in His Torah, and every time we open it, if we open our eyes and our ears and our minds, we have the opportunity to see something new or to renew something that we had kind of forgotten about.
Yeah.
So that's
Well, it's
that's really
so
all I
connected.
wanted to say.
Yeah, I think that the
Everything is
stories,
everything is connected.
yeah, there's so many connections. Whenever you look at these stories, if you really do, if you start to look like I often say, and I know some of you do this as well, you've told me as much, but whenever you open the Pentateuch to read it, I encourage people. It's sort of a ritual that I do, and it's I always say, "Gal einai va'avita niflaot mitorateka." Open my eyes, and I will look for wonderful things in your Torah. And the more we do this, the more we carefully read, I think it's important. You're looking for from the words, in connection with the words, and on the basis of the words. So what I want to do is I want to try to make sure that if I find a word that's used in this particular passage, follow that through, a phrase, and that's so important. And what's interesting about the what we call the Joseph saga, I mentioned in last week's portion, a lot of scholars refer to it as a novella. It's like a novel that stands out from other texts in the Hebrew Bible, particularly among the text of the Torah. It stands out because of its unique vocabulary and so forth. And some have speculated, this is speculation, but some have speculated that it was recorded by Joseph, because he's certainly got the means in an Egyptian court with scribes and so forth. Now, there's no
Mm,
hard, fast record for that, but I often think when I'm studying this particular section really from Genesis 37 through the end of chapter 50, verse 26 of Genesis, I think it's quite compelling to see a separate author's hand because of the unique vocabulary and and ideas and so forth.
absolutely. Yeah, I love this. And there was one other thing, but I kind of lost it. If I think of it, I'll raise my hand again. Um,
That sounds wonderful.
so
If you think of it,
the
raise your
the
hand
the
again.
shy little Betty Kay that I was named as a child used to be such a wallflower, but I've kind of come out of myself. So sometimes you may have to tell me, okay, Betty, that's enough. We don't need to hear
Okay,
anymore.
Betty, that's enough. No, I wouldn't
Okay,
say that to you, Betty. Thank you very
I
much,
know.
though. Thanks for coming. We'll see you later, and I look forward to seeing you at the conference, even though it's months away. Now,
Absolutely.
we're gonna see if Clody is ready yet. Mm, Clody, I'm not giving up on you, my friend. I'm gonna leave you right there because I can see it looks like something's going on with your sound, but we're gonna ask Eric. I'm gonna invite Eric on the stage. Clody, I'm gonna leave you right there. Eric, how are you today? You have to unmute if you hadn't already begun that process. There we
I
go.
I have to search around, my screen has changed.
I hear you.
Yeah, I was gonna say that, Nehemiah translated the word in that wonderful phrase of as "show me the hidden things in your Torah."
Uh huh.
And that kind of opens up the realm of, you might really find different things every time you read.
Mm hmm. Yeah, I guess so. I mean, he must be translating the word niflaot, uh, maybe as hidden. Let me see.
Right. Yeah, I think it was as
Yeah,
that,
yeah.
and the wondrous things, I think is
Yeah,
another
now
word used.
wondrous is more what I would do there, but I certainly would give some credit to whatever Nehemiah comes up with too. But the idea is the same. There are things
Right.
within, if we look and see, that's the point. We ask God to open our eyes, but there's a part that we have to do too. Like if I open my eyes and I don't look at the text of the Bible, then I'm not going to find wonderful things. I mean, you
Yeah.
can open your eyes to bad things. We get that from the very opening stories of the Bible. And then their
Mhm.
eyes were open. Well, that wasn't a good story. We know the how that turned out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. One other quick question is, when we started out studying this, we, as the group, kind of agreed that whenever you read Jacob, you're talking in the flesh. Whenever you read Israel, you're talking spiritually. Have you found that to be an interesting study?
I'm I'm interested because you just brought it up, but I've not necessarily noticed a really strong pattern of when Jacob is used versus when Israel is used. But I'm willing to look at that. I think it's certainly an interesting thing to consider because, as we know, we have two stories in Genesis, both of which tell us how the name change from Jacob to Israel went and what led to that and so forth. But what I have not done, other than notice that the name Israel is not consistently used after that change is made, and we have throughout the biblical text sometimes referred to as Jacob, sometimes referred to as Israel, and it's like sometimes when some of us grew up, and if a certain name is used by our parents, or if your full name is used, sometimes that may not be necessarily a good thing. But I don't find that yet. But I'm certainly, if you've got some study notes on that, Eric, maybe you could post that in the Discord, or maybe that would be a good discussion. Have people start to send in, hey, look at this. Every time Jacob is used, here's what we see.
Yeah. Well, my notes are kind of sketchy from 20 years ago.
Hey,
So
I have
I'll
file
have to
cabinets
ponder
full
it
of 'em.
again.
Yeah, but it's something to consider because the deeper question is really, why is it that God says your name will no longer be Jacob but Israel? And then we see that he's called Jacob sometimes. Now there are
Right.
various reasons put forward, but I'd be interested in what people find on that. So good points. What else, brother
Well,
Eric?
that's it. Other than it's
What
raining finally
I,
here.
I was going to say, I knew you posted that there's some bad weather coming your way. Prayers that you and your furry friends make it through all good, and that your beautiful gardens and plants get some good rain, and that's all that happens from that. How about that?
It looks good here so far. I think maybe the worst of it's just affecting the cruise ships out in the middle of the Gulf.
Okay, I need to look at that. I have a son on a cruise right now. He'd probably appreciate me
Uh-oh.
saying a prayer for him.
Amen.
All right,
Thanks.
brother Eric. Thank you. All right. I am going to, let's see. I have Karen. Karen, I'm going to invite you up to speak. Hey, Karen, how are you? Can you unmute for me? There it is.
Got it.
There it is.
Um, Betty brought up the story of the high priest Joshua in
Uh-huh.
Zechariah,
Yeah.
and I always think that's like a real perfect example of, the dirty garments as, as metaphorical and physical.
Okay.
Um, I don't think that the Satan is going to be given permission to kill someone for having a little bit of schmutz on their clothes.
Yeah.
But, in this case, it clearly represented something that the priest had done. Um, it wasn't just dirty clothes.
Yeah.
And, even to the point where I think in this passage, God uses his own name as an incantation to rebuke the Satan.
Right.
And, whatever Joshua had done was worthy of death. But, he is, I don't know if I want to use the word forgiven, but he is made clean again. And I think that a lot of this, metaphorical dirty garments kind of concept in the text is translated down into our own religions, if you will, through mikvah, through baptism. It's something that we do physically that represents a metaphorical cleansing
Yeah.
of our past. Anywho,
Well, let me ask you, because I follow what you're saying, and I brought up when Carolyn made her comments a few minutes ago that according to the Christian writings, there is an association between leaven and sin. It's like if you just put a little bit in there, it just goes crazy. And I think all of us can relate to that. I grew up in a very spiritual home, and I'm thankful for that. And it was a Christian home. But I remember my mother would tell me things like, and I know you might be able to relate to this, Karen. We've talked a little bit, but if you open the door just a little bit, and so you shouldn't. So it was always for me. I don't know how many of you grew up Christian, but for me in that Christian environment, it was what would Jesus do before that was even cool to say. It was like if you wanted to go see a movie, would you feel okay watching that movie if you knew Jesus was in the theater with you? Because he's right there with you, is the way I was taught. So in a way, but I think sometimes people tend to say all of that is Christian. By all of that, I mean things like your dirty garments representing a spiritual thing. But I think you may be right. If you look at something like this in Zechariah 3, so you're saying that it could carry over into this same spiritual analogy, right?
yeah.
I wonder if we can think of other ideas like that where we would typically associate that, maybe not with the Hebrew Bible, but there are other examples. That'd be a fun exercise. I'm trying to think of different things to get discussions going on our Discord. Just an idea.
Well, I actually heard something recently that kind of made me think of it too. Is not just in Christianity; it's also in Judaism. So when, let's say, a person converts to Judaism, they are considered born again. That's their birthday,
Yeah,
and they do the mikvah and they cleanse themselves, and it's a type of cleansing.
yeah,
They put on a clean garment. They, um, it's a type of washing away your past.
right. Yeah, and you're right. Those ideas connect. I mean, look, I know some in this group were former Christians. They no longer associate with Christianity and they don't want anything to do with it. It's like someone who gives up smoking, they don't want anything to do with cigarettes. But if you look at the continuity between, I know there are differences, but you look at some of the similarity of ideas, you can trace them from ancient times, from ancient biblical faith of the good brand, I would say, up through, say, the Qumran community into the Christian writings, and then the very much later Talmudic literature. So you do see connections there, and it's what we would expect because these are Jewish ideas quite often. So
Right.
yeah, good points.
I think that was all I had to add
Okay,
to today.
very good. Well, thanks for your comments. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day, and I'm going to invite Miriam. Miriam, welcome, my friend. There you are, and I think if you unmute, we should be good. It looks like you're unmuted. I don't hear you yet. I just noticed Dave Tyler posted, as Bob Dylan wrote, his clothes are dirty, but his hands are clean. Yeah, see, so he would, as Jim Brumgard says, he's Jewish. Zimmerman would know the meaning of that. Yeah, quite often. And Dave is a big music man. He and Patty are both very musically inclined, not only talented, but they're knowledgeable of the things. And one of the things that he often points out and we share together are some of the spiritual significance, some of the things that are spiritually significant in some of our music. Some people would call it secular, but maybe it's not so secular. All right, Miriam, are we ready? Are you there? I still don't hear you, and that is, I tell you what I'm going to do, Miriam. I'm going to leave you on the stage, and we're going to try this again momentarily. I see Betty has another idea. Betty, I'm going to bring you up on stage. Let's see if you're ready to tell us something else that struck you while we were talking.
Okay. Yes, there was something else that struck me, but before that, I wanted to comment on um, Eric's comment about the use of Jacob and Israel and the name change and all of that. Years ago, I also did a study, and I want to look up my notes and see, because I did find a significance in the occurrences when Jacob's name was used and when Israel's name was used. And as we know, nothing is by accident. So surely there is something that we can learn from that.
Yeah,
And the thing that I forgot is that through all of this Joseph saga, if you count the times, and we're not through with it yet. I think there's only been 6 times when the text records that Joseph wept. But there's 8 in all. And I just think it's very significant. In my article, I wrote all those times down,
yeah,
and it just hit me over and over and over. And someone mentioned they got goosebumps reading this. And
uh-huh,
I especially get goosebumps when I read all of the times that he wept and why. I
yeah.
just I just think it's amazing, the
Good point,
emotion
and
packed.
that's another good observation, Betty. To tie in again, it's a theme. It's one of the first of all the high level. At the high level, these stories are packed with emotion. You know, how does
Mm,
an author convey emotion through its
right.
characters? And if we see this of Joseph, you know, we should pay attention. That's a good point. Yeah. So there are 8
I
times where
think
it says he wept?
you just gotta love Joseph.
Yeah,
And in numerology, and I'm not big into that, but I do think perhaps there's some significance. I mean, 7 has the connotation of being complete, and 8 is a connotation of like a new beginning or going into a new uh, something new, um,
yeah,
whatever. So when he wept, well, I'm not going to say this. It's in my article, and I can post it again. I think it's been posted. It's the Ani Yosef, Joseph wept, part
yeah.
2. Um,
Well,
but
post it. I know
anyway,
that you posted it. I know that you posted it on the Facebook group. And now
I did.
here's your challenge, Betty. This is all the
Okay.
cool kids. All the cool kids are now moving to Discord. And so
Okay.
I'm going to encourage you, because you do write a lot for United Israel and you do various articles, and you're about to be publishing your book, as I understand it, because we both share the greatest editors that I know and the best cover designers. And so anyway, so
I know.
you need to get into this Discord and be
I need to
posting.
get techie. Is that what you're telling me?
You're going to have to.
I need
You're
to
going to
figure
have
out
to.
how to do this.
You
Okay.
got to. All right. Okay, very
I'm gonna
good.
work on it right now, but I will still pay attention to you and to everything that everybody says. I
All
can
right.
do 2 things at once.
It's because you
So,
were a teacher for so long. All right, good deal. All right, Betty,
alrighty.
I
Thank you,
appreciate you.
Russ.
All right. All right, I'm gonna
Appreciate
bring
you.
I appreciate you. I'm praying now that Clody is ready to go. Let's see what we got.
Can you hear me?
Amen. We can hear you.
Yes, I can't believe this.
We got you. You did it.
Okay, so I wanted to. I had 2 points. One was number 2 with the 2 dreams.
Okay.
That if there are 2 dreams with similar message, then it is from God.
Okay.
And it is I don't know why I remember also the 2 witnesses. I already wrote it in the messages.
Right.
It's something with because Betty was talking about numerology a bit. I'm not a big fan of numerology as well, but there are some things that there are like signs from God. So number 2 in this specific parshat,
Okay.
and also we see throughout the Bible number 7 and whatever other numbers. This was the first, and the second one was revenge. I know that most of us are not fans of revenge.
Right.
It's not a very cool thing to do. However, I know. So it's not like even if Joseph did all what he did to his brothers to take revenge on them, I don't think that it's revenge, because revenge, it would be like selling them into other places. So it's
Yeah.
not a revenge, but it is something that makes them, moves them, and makes them understand the gravity of their deed.
Yes.
And that is something that when I walked out of Christianity, I was a bit, let's say, I took off some burdens out of my soul, because I got and I understood that it's not, if God says an eye for an eye or a tooth for a tooth, I don't know it so well, or let's say Judaism or Tanakh, it's something a bit more liberating than turning your other cheek every time.
Yeah.
It is something that I have never thought of this, but in this class, in this time that I saw this class, it was like it hit me that perhaps we shouldn't be this, let's say, this
Pa-
very modest people, or these
passive.
very passive people,
Yeah.
exactly, because I couldn't find.
That's
Yeah,
it.
that is all that I wanted to.
Well,
Thank you, Seth, for the help.
Well, stay with me,
It was
because I think these are both very good ideas. Number one, I'll do it backwards from the way that you presented them. But you were talking about this idea of what exactly is Joseph doing to his brothers, and this is going to really come out in the next class, as I recall. But one of the things that always strikes me, your point is very well taken. It's not that he is inflicting vengeance on them, but he must test. He has to test to make sure that they truly learned the lesson. How will they treat when their brother's life is in their hands? Have they learned a lesson? And he still. I mean, if you think about the story, it's a very, very tragic story to know that your brothers, your own flesh and blood, turns you over They wanted to kill you and ultimately turned you over, and you ended up in slavery and all these other things. And now he's putting them in the same position almost. This is the way I think about it. But this time he's got Benjamin. How will you, will you do the same to another
How will
brother?
you treat Benjamin? Yes. How
Yeah,
will you treat the other Rachel's son?
that's it. And even beyond that, I think that, your point when you opened up, you said that hopefully none of us are people who are thinking in terms of just vengeance, and we're exposed to the idea of brotherly love on a big scale in the opening chapters of the Bible, and then it's played out in several examples in the biblical text. But you remember, God asked Cain, "Where is your brother?" And he says, "Am I my brother's keeper?" I think is the way it translates it in English. But that's the question: are we our brother's keeper? And in this case, the valuable lesson that Joseph is helping his brothers understand, it's a powerful lesson, and it goes beyond the biblical text. And I think it's just one of the greatest stories ever. I really do. The whole saga, the whole thing. Um, you're
I agree. Okay,
you're
I can go now. Thank you.
okay. All right. Thank you, Clody. Good points, and I'm glad we worked out the technology. Thank you, Seth, for sticking with that and helping. Okay, now Miriam. Okay, everyone, let's pray that Miriam has her technology working now. I'm going to invite her to the stage. Let's see if we got you now, Miriam. Miriam, we want this to work. So we'll give you a couple of minutes to see if you can. I see that you're unmuted. Now you're muted. Now you're unmuted. I can see that bit. What I don't know is what the exact. Let's see. Joshua says, I heard her for a second. I think maybe she has the hold to talk feature turned on. And Seth just heard you as well. All right. So whatever you did a minute ago, Miriam. Now, whenever you get this working, Miriam, you just jump in and I'll be quiet. But until then, I'll fill the air with a few more comments. I want to go back to the idea that we mentioned the conference that's coming up in April. I know that that's a long way off, but I really want people to think about joining us for that. So make sure we'll post the links as well. Okay, Miriam, here we go. Inviting you to the stage. I got you. I can hear you. Or I did hear you.
Hello.
Okay, I can. You're very, very faint. Let me try to turn you up here.
Maybe
All right, let's try it again, Miriam. All right, try to give me some. Yeah, I can hear you. I hear you now. Give me some good comments, Miriam.
But okay. My question by Genesis.
You were coming in and out, Miriam.
Okay.
Maybe get closer to your microphone. Let's see. All right, same rule applies. If you want to try it, you jump in, and if I hear you, I'll be quiet. Betty,
Okay.
what? Now, see there, you came in. Let's try it. Let's try it again, Miriam.
Okay, I'm here. Can you hear me?
I hear you now. Let's hope it stays.
Hey, this is 41 and 13. It's about dream of Abraham, and I'm not sure, is it that if you do double bring it about?
You know, I missed most of that. I think that you're asking about the doubling of the dreams, and is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So one of the things that we talked about, in fact, this came up in a comment just a few moments ago. I know Clody brought this up as well. There is this idea presented in the biblical text where it says, where Joseph, as the dream interpreter, I do like the phrase, the Lord of the dreams, but as the dream interpreter, with God's help, we know, one of the things that he tells us in the text, the writer wants us to realize that if a dream comes twice, then according to the story, what does he say? It's from God, it's going to come to pass. Now, I think that at times there can be, people might have dreams that are not of divine origin, but at the same time, people that I know who do dream a lot, like I've said this before, and I'll say it again because we're talking about dreams. I typically don't remember my dreams. Very, very seldom in my life have I had dreams that I have remembered and that I applied something spiritual to them. But I know people very close to me who have a lot of dreams, and they are spiritually significant, at least to them and perhaps to those around them. So I'm not necessarily the expert on dreams. Like, if I don't even remember, I bet I can only recall just a handful of dreams that I've had in my entire life. So I don't know so much about whether a repetition of a dream means anything other than what I've read in the text. Now, again, there are people who have really spent a lot of time on dreams, and they have a lot of dreams. And they'll tell you that certain symbols, I've heard people say that if you, in your dream, you're looking out a window, that has a certain significance. But then other times, who knows? But now, if I can, I'm going to try to hear you, Miriam. Are you someone who does have dreams? Do you recall your dreams quite often?
Not often,
Not
not
often.
past. Yes,
Yeah,
not often, but I do.
yeah, okay. So we may be alike in that sense. Now, but again, I know that some people have quite a few dreams and they recall them and they apply significance. The thing that I think is important from a biblical perspective, if we look at halom, the word for dream, and we look at the biblical instances of dreams, we get here in Genesis, we get particularly among the patriarchs. Remember, Jacob has a dream, and it has to do with some work that God is going to do in his life. All through the patriarchal narratives, we have dreams. In the narratives in the book of Numbers, we find out that according to Numbers chapter 12, God tells Miriam and Aaron that God speaks to prophets through dreams. So there is a great significance to dreams, and I think that's one of the most important lessons that we get from these Joseph sagas. Sometimes God is informing the person that he's working through, that he's going to do something in his life or her life, as the case might be. Sometimes it's used to help that person, like in the case where Pharaoh has dreams and Joseph is used to convey the message of what God is doing in his life. So, all right. No, good points. And hopefully, hey, we made some progress, Miriam. We got to hear you a little bit. And we'll try one more time if you have any follow-up on that. Let's see if we got you.
Thank you.
All right, my friend. Well, I look forward to seeing everyone later in the week. Do we have any more questions or comments before we call today's session a wrap? I see Betty just posted her her comments on Ani Yosef, I am Joseph, and so I encourage people to read that. And here's what I want to encourage you to do. If your schedule allows, and you're able, join the Yakad, join Jono and Ross, me, on Wednesday nights for our live show where you can be part of the audience there. This exact same place. We do that on the Discord in this exact environment. And you're able, after Jono and I go through our discussion, you're able to jump in and give us your feedback, your comments, your questions at the end of that. And then what we do afterwards is we post that on Thursday as a video. Okay, I see Nikita. I'm going to invite Nikita. Thank you, Miriam. Have a blessed week. We'll see you later. I'm going to invite Nikita to the stage. Hello, Nikita. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom to you and everyone. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fabulous. Loved, again, the class. I love my highs I get on the Shabbat because of the classes. It just adds to my day. It's a beautiful thing, and I really appreciate all the hard work you put into all your teachings.
Well, I love it.
I wanted to comment on something that David Tyler said earlier.
Yeah.
And he said about it being hard to get away from our old ways, which I totally, completely agree.
Right.
The thing I wanted to say about it is that gives us, considering the age that we live in, the era that we live in, that we don't sacrifice animals or that type of thing, that gives us something to show God how much we love him by sacrificing that.
Yeah.
That thing that would keep us trapped or to our past or something. So, being a former Southerner and a Christian, I had ham a lot. So when I got to the part to where I read that, this animal is unclean, I sacrificed it to the Lord in obedience, because I'm like, there's nothing I will remove anything that will disrupt the relationship that I have with him.
Amen. I get you.
That's my gladly given sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm with you. I think you're right. And a lot of us, and it's not just Southerners. I happen to be a Southerner as well. And you can't, if you're, maybe it's everybody, and I just know Southerners, but I grew up, we had pork chops quite often. We ate ham, obviously. And my favorite of everything was Jimmy Dean breakfast sausage. I'm just telling you right now. And when I read, and it impacted me when I first read it, you know how, and when you see it, you're like, oh man, I can't do this anymore. I remember when that first hit me and I had to give that up. I mean, look, a lot of people have very big struggles. For me, that was a big struggle. But I was, like you said, I was happy to push that away. Now, it did take me a little while to admit that pepperoni was pork. I just didn't want to look that one up. But over time, we give those things up. And I agree with you. I think that can be considered, it's part of what we do to try to clean our act up and get in a better place in obedience. So those are good points.
I had the, you said Jimmy Dean, I had the thing with Bob Evans zesty sausage. And
All
someone
right.
said bacon. I had the bacon trial too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pepperoni. I can't eat pizza is just not the same because I put the pepperoni and the sausage, everything on
Uh-huh.
mine. So
A
yeah.
meat lover.
But
A meat lover.
one of the other issues I wanted to say as far as that line goes about, the Lord has given us a way to make an offering to him for something that we thought we could not do without for sake of him, in obedience and for love of him.
Yeah.
So, and someone else had said something about the revenge.
Mm-hmm.
The Most High, in my understanding, the Most High, it's a verse in Hosea that says that we reap the wind. I mean, we sow the wind, but we reap the whirlwind. And the reason why the reaping of it is so much bigger than the sowing of it, because our sense of what that sin was dulled because
Yeah.
we did it.
Yeah.
We make excuses for our own behavior, but then when it comes back, it has to be that much harsher for us to see how bad our behavior had been previously.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it's an interesting walk, and what makes it better is to meet people like you and all of those who are assembled here today, because I think a lot of us initially probably felt like we were all alone in the world, and as we meet other people, it certainly strengthens us and gives us courage to push forward, because we look around and we see apparently God is doing a work with many other people from all different walks of life. And I think that's a thing that really strengthens our resolve to do the right thing.
Okay, that statement just gut punched me, and I'll tell you why. Because we're talking about dreams, and I dream like crazy. I mean, I died in my dreams, and the dreams just keep going like I never lived at all. But I had one about being in the desert, a dream about being in the desert, just me and sitting in the desert. And I was so happy to be in the desert. I mean, there was no greenery, there was no well, there was just me there in the desert, smiling, and the sun was beaming on me. But anytime I needed something, I stuck my hand in the sand and pulled whatever that thing was right out.
Wow.
So to me, it taught me that my path would lead me to a place of isolation, but I would not be lonely. And I would always feel great about choosing to stay there. So, coming from Christianity and, your whole family's Christian, a lot of people understand you or say they do, but they draw back because, you're weird now.
Yeah.
But it's never bothered me to the point to where I would ever trade it for what I had.
Yeah.
And this community has given me a place to be, to talk to and learn from like-minded people, and to praise God openly and freely. And so when you said that, it just hit me. That was what the desert dream was all about. Thank you. I appreciate it.
I appreciate you, and I love the desert. And a lot of times coming from a Christian background, I used to hear people say, "Yeah, brother, I'm in a desert place. I'm in the wilderness," and what they mean is that they're in a very difficult time in their spiritual journey. But let me tell you, Nikita, to your point, what I tell somebody now, if they would tell me that, I'd say, oh, wow, that must be incredible. You mean that God is miraculously feeding you and you're hearing his voice? That's incredible. I'm so happy to hear that you're in the desert, because it's in the desert where God brings us to him. And look, it's going to happen again. The book of Hosea talks about this, how he's going to woo his woman back to him in this wilderness. And I think that God has to bring, it's the way it works. It's you get pulled into the wilderness. So if you're in the wilderness and we're all in the wilderness, then we're in the right place. How's that sound?
Hallelujah.
All right.
That's how it sounds.
That's right. Hey, all right, I appreciate you, Nikita. I'm going to bring Joshua Chisholm up, and you have a glorious day, Nikita. We'll see you next time.
You sir, as well.
All right, Joshua. I think I just brought you on stage, my friend. Well, I thought I did. There he is.
I
All right,
gotcha.
Josh. All right. How are you today, my friend?
I'm well, sir. Good afternoon.
Good to see you
Can
or
you hear
hear
me
you.
okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm having to juggle through some microphones myself right now. This discussion that we've had this morning has brought a lot of ideas to mind for me. And I'm relating them to some of the things I'm seeing currently in the wider world of podcasting, what a lot of other folks are talking about. And my attention is really drawn towards these food ideas. I know that there are Jewish traditions that talk about foods that we eat can influence our dreams. Um, and Carolyn and Betty in particular were talking about, these ideas about wearing certain clothing
Yeah.
and eating certain foods like the yeast and the leaven. So one of the things that we're learning about now, and more human biologists and more doctors are coming forth and talking to us about, is that there are foods that we eat that can affect our hormone production, which will in turn affect the way that we feel about things. Because so much of our feelings are derived from these chemicals that our brain produces. So it just makes me think about some things that some of our modern psychologists, like Jordan Peterson and others, talk about managing our bodies, managing ourselves, and taking responsibility for managing our feelings.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of ideas, and I just wanted to get maybe some feedback on that, because in particular, Dr. Peterson made this quote about 10 years ago that he wanted to admonish his patients to treat themselves like somebody that they were responsible for taking care of.
Yeah.
And I think that includes things that it reminds me of a Bible study that you gave about 3 or 4 years ago about how there's so much in the early text from the Genesis narrative that revolves around food
Yeah.
and about how we need to keep ourselves clean. And
That's right.
like Carol was talking about, if we're not very scrupulous with keeping ourselves clean, we can carry this bacteria around with us. Think about
Yeah.
things like trichinosis that we get from pigs. That can
Yeah.
affect the way that people feel and behave. If you get scratched by a feral cat, they carry a specific kind of bacteria that can also affect the way that people behave, which apparently was very rampant in France not that long ago. So I know that's a lot of just random ideas, but I'm kind of wanting to pull this together and see what you think about that.
Hey, I think it's very important, and I mean the biblical texts have so much in it about diet that I think that is important, And I know that some people we're in different places. I mean, I have friends that are vegan, friends that are vegetarian, friends that are not so careful at all with their diet. But I tell you what, I would like is that this type of discussion is kind of an outgrowth of a larger discussion. These really are great topics to bring into the discord in the dialogue portion. And I see Jodelle is on. Jodelle has written in her book. She has quite a bit about the diet. There's so much out there now, and we live in a time where there's so much available. I would love for this kind of material to be, really fill the online pages of our Discord. And I'm really telling you that as we get better at using this Discord channel, it is going to be the place that people can go to share and to provide some meaningful things for people to read. Look, it's just like anything else. You're going to see things that you agree with, things that you don't agree with. As long as we remain respectful and we have open dialogue, I think it's a great thing. So maybe,
Absolutely.
Joshua, I think this is another thing that we could discuss on this very channel. We can go into the
Maybe
dialogue and
maybe I can spark a discussion, because one of the things I would like to do is have some topics where we're relating things that happen organically in our Bible study discussions and how they relate to things that are going on out there in the wider world. Because we're talking about things that other people are talking about in lots of other places.
Yeah.
But they
Very
don't
good.
have a biblical foundation, so that's a little bit different. But I still think it's important to, you know, look at what we're doing and then look at what other people are doing. Because I think that
Yeah.
we talk about God's Spirit communicating with all of humanity around the world. And we had a discussion a couple of weeks ago about, learning how we can listen and understand what God's communicating to us. Lots of good ideas there.
Right. No, excellent. Yeah, if you get the urge, Joshua, just post up anything, and I think that's the beautiful thing about these is you can then go in and sort, and as people add to it, you can go back through, and I think it can be quite helpful for everyone. So
Okay, that
very
sounds good to me.
good.
Thanks, Rob.
Hey, man, have a beautiful day, and I am going to call up. Let's see. My next is going to be Clody. All right, Clody. Let's try it again. You ready? Just unmute and we're ready.
Can you hear me?
Excellent. That's 2 in a row, Clody. We got it now.
Okay, great. Sorry. So I just remembered another theme that you pointed out. That is the repeating of the same themes throughout generations.
Yeah.
And I think that we do have repeating themes all over the place in the Bible, with Israel moving in and out of Israel, with idolatry and then repenting, with adding to the law of God and then finding Torah or scroll and then clearing,
Yeah.
making clean,
Yep. Yep.
the word of God and the way that Israel worships God. I think that this is very repeated all throughout the Bible.
I agree.
And I think that it is relatable even now for this moment that we are, because it is, at least for me, I think that it is very, we can find all over the place literatures and other addings and other theories apart from the law of God.
Yeah.
And I also wanted to, this is another point that you pointed out, that is how Judah had to be the one that talks to his father about Benjamin, because he was the one that suffered similar pain, similar loss, or greater loss than his father.
Yeah.
So I don't know how, I know that many people have gone through much more pain than me. However, I was, before like 3 or 4 days, 3 or 4 days ago, I was very in crisis because I moved from Boston to New York, and I am now living some difficult days, economically speaking, because I am trying to find a job, and that is okay. It's very it happens a lot when you move in and out of one place.
Right.
However, when I talked to some people that wanted to make this burden a bit easier for me, I was like, nobody understands me apart from my father that lived the same thing, let's say like 20 or 30 years ago in Athens, when he was in the middle of nowhere, knowing nobody, and trying to make a living. So I was like, yes, he's the only one that can understand me. So, and it was easier for me to listen to my father and to hear whatever he wanted to say to me or had to say to me. It was much more easier for me to listen somebody that has gone through the same thing. So
Excellent.
yeah, that is all.
Excellent, excellent point. No, I get that. And that is one of the things. I can't tell you how many times I read through these stories and never really thought about. I mean, I noticed that the story of Judah seemed to interrupt the narrative of Joseph, and I mean, I noticed those kind of things. But when it hit me that the only reason that the father that Joseph that Jacob trusted Judah with his son, the only reason that I could think of, it hit me, he realizes that Judah knows loss. And when I saw that, it doesn't specifically say that. I'm not trying to, but I think that message is there right under the surface. So we all have a tendency to trust someone who knows because of their experience. And I think that you're right to lean on your father's advice at this time, because I think that's the way to go. We tend to feel more comfortable, and we should. I think we should.
Also, I just wanted to say another thing. So when my father made the first immigration, like 10 or 15 years in Greece, he was very eager to work and to be very accommodating economically for our family. On the other hand, I think that he overworked himself.
Yeah.
And now, after 30 years, I am in the same position, and I have to stick to what's right and what the God's law says about keeping Shabbat and not overworking.
Yeah.
So I think that throughout generations, people have to be very aware of what the generations before them have done right and not so right.
That's
To
right.
become better and to go closer to whatever God demands of us.
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. Well, and I think that everyone here, because we are kind of turning into a nice little family of friends, community, and I think that every one of us could remember you in their prayers this week, that you would find the right job that does allow you to do what it is that you feel you're supposed to do, to follow God's ways, and that it's something that takes care of your needs. So I think that everyone, if you would just kind of as a friend of Clody, let's all remember Clody in our prayers this week. This is what we're here for. I think we can all do that, and I think most of us believe that God hears and answers prayers. So let's all do that this week. How about that? And then you can update us. You can update us and let us know how it's going. Sounds like a good deal. Thank you, Clody. I'm going to bring up Betty. And Betty, unless someone absolutely has something that they feel they can't wait, we're going to let you kind of wrap things up for us, I think.
Okay, I was going to say to Clody too. I've been, my husband and I have been where you are, where we lost everything and had no clue how we were going to go forward, and we did. So I will pray with you, pray for you in earnest, because I do understand. And the other thing has to do with this group being a family. I just want to say, and I can get through this without tears. Those who know me know I'm very emotional. kind of like Joseph. But I just, I love this group. I'm hoarse, and I'm not crying. I love this group, and we have become like a family, and I think it is wonderful, and you are all special, and I'm just glad that you're here and that I'm here and that God has brought us together. Um, the other thing has to do with I think several people mentioned food and um, the idea of bloodshed. And, we are not to eat blood because blood is the soul, or it's the, what is it? Life is in the blood.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I'm thinking, of all the blood that has been shed in Israel. And I'm sure that all of that blood is crying out to our God. Um, and we know that He hears. And my prayer, I know, along with all of you, is that justice will come forth and Hashem will deliver His people. We don't understand why, how, whatever, but I don't think we have to understand everything.
Yeah.
I think we just have to continue to pray and to hope. And to me, that image of the blood crying out from the ground is something that is, again, so chilling to me.
Yeah.
So may Hashem avenge His people. And I love you all. Really, I do. And I'm through now because this is my third time up on stage. And
That's
Roger used to tell me he was married 3 times. I was the third wife. He would say, third time is a charm.
there you
So
go.
here, it's my third time and I'm done.
Hey, thank you for your comments, Betty. And listen, thanks everyone. Let me just say, I did receive a message while I made a comment earlier about all the cool kids are on Discord, and I won't name her, Marlene, but she sent me a note and said not all. So not everyone who is cool, and I mean extremely cool, not everyone's on Discord, but Marlene is the only person I know that is cool that's not. So if you're able, in all seriousness, if you are able, we do things on various platforms. So we don't want anyone to feel excluded. I promise you that. But if you're not currently on there and you are okay with joining it, I know, look, there are a lot of different things going on. Do join. And if you're not, stay with us wherever you can. Stay connected however you can, because it's very important, I think, for all of us to stay connected. We have become very close in a lot of ways. I appreciate your time. I appreciate your dedication, your support. And I would also encourage all of you that as you get ideas, either from the class or your own personal studies, to post those in wherever it is that we gather, so you can get some input and feedback from others. And I appreciate everyone's time. Hopefully, this has been beneficial. I hope to see you on Wednesday night, and if not, join us Thursday night. If you can't do that, we'll see you this coming weekend. Shabbat Shalom, Shavua Tov. Have a glorious week. I'll see you all later.